here's how to counter every single killer's power in Dead by Daylight. This guide won't be using specific perks as examples, since obviously if you run a perk that stops you from screaming against a killer like Doctor who makes you scream, it'll counter him. But since you don't have Future Sight, I won't be using examples like that. Some of the stronger killers at the end have bonus tips and counters that even my friends with thousands of hours didn't know. So make sure to watch till the bonus tips so you'll be unstoppable as Survivor. Trapper. The best way to play against Trapper is by following him around the entire match. If you find him early while he's still setting up, you can follow him to disarm as he goes, essentially neutralizing his power. Just make sure to keep the right amount of distance between you both, so you can make it to a resource if he chases you. If you're in a Swift, make sure to call out where traps have been placed, and if you're solo queue, make sure to make a mental note of what loops are and aren't safe, so if you get caught off guard by the killer, you know where to run. Wraith. To counter Wraith, your best bet is to play as safe as possible, since Wraith thrives off of body blocking pallets or windows if a survivor greeds. Most Wraith players will fake uncloak at a pallet, then recloak for a faster break. Your best bet here is to not drop the pallet the first time he fakes it, then just flip a coin the rest of the time. If you consistently switch between actually dropping it or waiting for him to recloak, then you'll buy a ton of time for your team. Also prioritize stunning him while uncloaking, since his recovery is a lot longer if he gets stunned while uncloaking. You'll also frequently see perks like Bamboozle on Wraith to get rid of windows, so make sure to keep mind of that. Hillbilly. Billy is one of those killers that if played well has very little counterplay. You're best off staying at loops where he won't get much value out of his chainsaw, such as rough fillers or jungle gyms. Try and stay away from tiles like the car loop, since he can easily curve around the smooth side and down you. You can also do your best to force an M1 if you're at a window and healthy, since you can use the speed boost to get somewhere else where he might not get as much value from his saw. Try to avoid his back and forth rev mine game whenever possible, and do your best to leave the loop or loop the other side, since you're always at a disadvantage when he moonsaws. Nurse. Speaking of killers that have little counterplay, this killer has no counterplay. That is only if they're playing perfectly though. One of Nurse's biggest weaknesses is newer players trying out the best killer, and line of sight blocking. Since she relies so heavily on being able to see the survivor to blink on top of them, do your best to put trees, rocks, tiles, or any other line of sight blocking terrain in between you both. If you are able to break line of sight, your best bet is to take the 50-50 of either continuing to gain distance by holding W or doubling back outside of her line of sight and hugging the object she saw you behind last. There's a decent chance most nurses will over blink to where they think you'll be. The best nurses though will blink to the last spot they saw you in and use their second blink to readjust. There's not much you can do about this most times, so your best option is focusing on not tilting, since that'll just make you play worse. Myers. To counter Myers, just be aware of your surroundings. He doesn't have an ability to catch up and chase or down you from a distance, so he relies on perks and stealth to make up for this. Keep your mechanics strong and loop him like a trapper with no traps. You can also do your best to break line of sight at loops and hold W when given the chance to break line of sight even further. If you're playing against the Tombstone Myers or Scratch Mirror, just either stay healed or hop locker when he's in tier 3. Although unless you're in a 4-person Swift, you probably won't escape a Tombstone Myers, so it might just be worth it to save your time and give them the achievement. Hag. Countering Hag is similar to countering Trapper. Pick one person to follow them around and trigger their traps from a distance. If you're not in a team and can't pick one person, become that person for your team. It's pretty easy to bait a trap activation, then get enough distance to not get hit, if you know exactly where the trap is. Hag heavily relies on survivors being caught off guard while in chase or doing other actions. So if a survivor intentionally triggers a trap and then runs away, most times she can't get a hit. Some Hag players will attempt to set up a 3-gen with their traps on every resource nearby. The best way to beat this, and any other 3-gen killer, is getting some progress, getting hit, going to the other side of the map where the gens aren't, and resetting. Do this until a gen pops, someone gives up, or the killer runs out of gen kicks and DCs. Doctor. Doctor is another one of those killers who can't be countered if played perfectly, at least in chase. One of Doctor's biggest weaknesses though is lack of map pressure. If a Doctor times his shocks perfectly, you won't be able to drop a pallet or vault anything. Use this to your advantage and force him to continuously shock and get as much value as long as you can before getting hit and leaving the loop. You either want to pre-throw pallets or plan on never throwing pallets, since he can completely prevent you from throwing it mid-chase, so you're better off just wasting as much of his time as possible so your team can focus on gens. Even if you don't have a super long chase, since he doesn't have an amazing amount of mobility, if you make the most out of the resources around you, then your team should be able to get 2 to 3 gens done for your first chase. Huntress. My tips for countering Huntress are a bit more unordinary. The best way to play against Huntress is learning how her hatchet hitbox works with the survivor hitboxes. From what I know, Huntress hatchets are pill-shaped, exerting slightly outside of the model for the actual hatchet. When you combo this with the fact that survivor hitboxes are behind where survivors are, it can make for some pretty insane hits. Use this information to get a better sense of what tiles are safe to loop against a Huntress and which ones aren't. I also recommend greeding safe pallets as much as possible, since she's slower than regular killers. You can also greed unsafe pallets as a last resort if you don't have any resources around you. Just make sure your reaction time is sharp enough in case she commits through it and doesn't pull up her hatchet. Cannibal. To counter Bubba, it's as simple as not greeding. That's literally it. Don't greed pallets, don't greed for early saves on teammates, and accept there's nothing you can do against a camping Bubba. Bubba's biggest strength comes from survivors who attempt to greed resources. Drop the pallet when you think there's even a chance that the Bubba will catch up during his chainsaw sweep, and you'll be fine. The Nightmare. Countering Freddy is also as simple as just staying awake. If you stay awake, that gets rid of 85% of his power. He still has the ability to put you to sleep with his snares or by hitting you, but both of those things take valuable time that can be used by your team to do gens. There's also some smaller aspects to his kit that are good to be aware of. Always make sure to wake up before healing, since he can teleport to any survivor that's healing while asleep, and always get some distance from a generator whenever he starts his teleport. You also have the ability to wake yourself up by failing a skill check, but I wouldn't recommend this. You're better off spending the time it takes to find a clock or a teammate and have them do it for you. Pig. Pig is another killer that's incredibly easy to counter. For her head traps, just don't greed. Do your best to get your traps off as early as possible, since she has a limited amount of them. For her ambush attack, it's usually in your best interest to just leave a loop when she starts the ambush, rather than try to win the mind game of which way she's going. Some strong Pig players know this though, and will crouch and start to ambush, then stop the growl and stand up to catch you off guard while you try to leave. Just pay attention to what the Pig does at the loop and never assume she's going to 100% commit to anything. That goes for the direction she lunges and whether or not she stays at the loop. To counter her stealth aspect, similar to most other stealth killers, just be aware of your surroundings while idle to avoid being snuck up on. Clown. As of writing this script, Clown is the most broken he's ever been. As a friend of mine put it, why did we make playing Clown take the same brain power as eating a box of crayons? So I'll be going over how to counter the weaker version of him after the nerf that he's definitely getting. Clown thrives at shredding through resources and getting hits for free. Since his bottles slow you to such a high degree, the best way to play against him is by forcing stuns when you can, since Clown thrives at mind gaming unsafe and safe pallets. If you're able to get a stun, you should attempt to leave the loop as soon as you can, but if there's poison in the area, you may get hit anyway. Since the Clown has so little mobility, aside from his current patch, he struggles at applying map pressure. So do your best to take chase away from your team and keep people spread out on gens to make the most of his lack of mobility. Spirit. Countering Spirit is tricky, since she's definitely up there with some of the best killers in the game. The simple counter is doing your best to stay healthy if you're not running Iron Will. Do your best to stop running and walk away from an area if she's phasing near you, since if you haven't sprinted recently and are healthy, and if she's not running specific add-ons, then she won't be able to find you. Two important things to be aware of: when you sprint, your survivor makes loud breathing noises for the next 3 seconds, even while healthy. And when you slow roll a window or pallet, you also make a grunting noise. You can actually use this one to your advantage though, since dropping your item makes the same noise it does when you slow vault. So you can drop an item at a pallet to fake slow vaulting over it and throw her off. A spirit with a $500 headset though will probably win most chases regardless of what you do though, but that's just spirit being spirit. Legion. Countering Legion is as simple as not healing. Most of their strength comes from wasting time, and they're even stronger against survivors who aren't comfortable being injured. Just accept the fact that you're going to be injured all match and split up so they don't get a ton of frenzy value. Also make sure you wait to fully mend yourself until you're sure that Legion is out of frenzy, since if you mend too early, they can use you twice to progress for their 5th hit and sit down. Plague. Countering Plague is also just as simple as not cleansing. She can run add-ons to give herself some extra pulls, but aside from that, if you don't cleanse, she's out of a power for the match. Get comfortable playing injured and don't let the fear of not being healthy get in your way. You can also cleanse endgame if needed across the map from her, if she's trying to camp a hook. This is because she has to be at the fountain to use the power. So if you cleanse super far away, it'll help you get the save for free without giving her the power for free. Ghostface. To counter Ghostface, do your best to be aware of your surroundings at all times, since his power literally comes from him looking at you when you're not looking at him. His stalking progress on you can also be reset when he hits you, so if you think you're 99'd, meaning he can pop his power and stalk you for a second to instant expose you when he's close to you, you can try and force a hit right after he gets revealed out of his power. This will give you the awareness that comes with playing injured, while giving him far less value out of his power, since exposing you won't do anything. Also, don't rely on the reveal mechanic to work consistently. There will be times when you're fully looking at him and he still won't get revealed, and he'll be able to expose and down you because of it. Play it safe and break line of sight when you can, and gain distance. Demogorgon. Demo's power is incredibly simple. He can shred at you and teleport. To counter his teleports, do your best to destroy his portals near important objectives, like gens in a 3-gen or portals next to lit totems. You can ignore the rest pretty much the entire trial. To counter his shred, just do your best to avoid long sections where he can shred you before you get to a resource. Shack window, most TL walls, and a decent amount of safe pallets are all good examples of resources to be cautious around when against the demo. You can try to fake the window or pallet by running up to it and then crouching next to it so the demo smacks it, but the demo might just M2 fake and get close enough to hit you anyway. Your all-around best option is to avoid all 50-50s if you can. Oni. To counter Oni, do your absolute best to avoid the first hit. Drop as many pellets as you need to and play as safe as possible. DC if necessary. Oni doesn't have a power until he hits a survivor, so if you're able to deny that first hit for long enough, he'll be stuck chasing you with no power. You won't be able to deny it the entire match, but you should be able to do a good enough job that you get 2 or 3 gens done. Once he does have his power, he's incredibly strong at most loops. Do your best to take sharp corners around walls and break line of sight, since he has to rely on hitting you with a flick if you're outside of his vision, which can be inconsistent as of the current patch. Also, if you're worried about your team getting slugged, you can hop into a locker before you go down. If he grabs you out of it, he'll be instantly taken out of his power, even if he drops you. His progress bar pauses where it was, but he won't be able to immediately go back into it. Bonus tip: if you deny first hit forever, Oni's power will only passively charge to 98%, preventing him from ever getting his power without an injury. This doesn't change much since it's still incredibly difficult to pull off, but still fun to be aware of for those one-off situations. Deathslinger. Slinger is incredibly bugged as of now, and a majority of his animations just won't play, especially when aiming down sights. Hopefully this will be fixed in the future, and I'll go over how to play around him when working properly, but there's a chance that you just need to be able to predict the future to counter current Slinger. Deathslinger is one of those killers that heavily relies on good hitboxes, so if you're at a pallet that has higher walls, he won't be able to get much use out of his gun, and that's even more of a hindrance since he's slower than the other killers. Try and keep line of sight broken at all times, and if you're about to vault a pallet or window you think he's gonna shoot you at, crouch before the vault. There's a solid chance that he'll shoot over your head expecting you to vault. After you do this a few times though, he'll catch on and will M2 fake more frequently, so be on the lookout for that. Executioner. Similar to Deathslinger, Pyramid Head is incredibly good at M2 faking, and relies way less on hitboxes. The same crouch mind game mentioned in previous segments does work against him, but instead of crouching, you should probably move to the left or right. When looping this killer, your best bet is praying the person playing him doesn't have the ability to slow down time, since if he M2s directly on you, you have a close to nothing amount of time to react. You can use this to your advantage though, at loops where he can't catch up immediately. Go left and right from where he's aiming and try to keep your movement as unpredictable as possible. It won't always work, but when it does, it'll be enough to avoid a couple of hits. When you're tormented after stepping in his trail, do your best to be the one to uncage other survivors, since this will get rid of your torment. Some pyramid heads won't cage at all though, so they can mori anyone that gets to death hook. You can't do much about this unfortunately, just try not to be the one on death hook when tormented if possible. Blight. Countering Blight is tricky since he's top 3 best killers in the game. The most consistent way to last the longest in chase though is filler pallets. Around tiles like TLs or jungle gyms, Blight gets a ton of value rushing through the tile to down you, since there's long enough stretches for him to do this. Filler pallets are a lot smaller and you have more time to get to the other side of the pallet when he bounces around the surroundings. Try and greet a filler as long as possible, since once you drop the pallet, he's almost guaranteed a hit if you don't have another one close by. Also try and force him to use his power to hit you when you're healthy, since a lot of Blights will try and use their basic attack to injure you, then rush to catch up after your speed boost, getting it down with their power for free. Try not to let this happen. Bonus tip: your hitbox actually changes when you crouch, and you can use this to your advantage against a Blight. If a Blight is rushing at you in the open, try to fake one side, then go to the other and crouch. If the killer doesn't know how to counter this, then they'll slide right off of you and miss their swing. Twins. Twins are much easier to counter if you're playing with a team, since the best way to take care of Victor is by using using a buddy system. If you're able to do so, try and keep 2 survivors together at all times and go everywhere together. This way, if Victor starts chasing you, you hopefully either have the ability to let the healthy one take the hit, or kick Victor after he downs someone and heal the person who is down before Charlotte gets there. Sometimes you won't have enough time to get the heal off though, or be coordinated enough to kick Victor in time. It's unrealistic to expect to be able to play perfectly against this killer, especially if solo. If you are solo, try to pick a teammate and stay with them the majority of the match, so you can have each other's backs. Trickster. Trickster has no counterplay, at least not in chase. You can do your best to break line of sight to delay the down, but in most situations, there is nothing you can do to win that chase. Take advantage of the fact that he has no mobility and try and keep survivors as separated as possible and on separate gens. Trickster, as well as other ranged killers, is hurt by line of sight blockers. You can use this to your advantage to a certain degree, but the amount he gets slowed when using his knives is so minimal that any line of sight blockers are dismissible at that point. Nemesis. The way you counter Nemesis plays similarly to how you counter Huntress or Demo, where 50/50s and M2 fakes are where the killer thrives. Try to fake windows and pallets as much as you can, since vaulting while the killer has a line of sight on you almost guarantees a hit from his whip. He also has the ability to hit you over pallet loops if the loop is short enough. Crouching can stop this from happening, but it can be tricky. As far as I know, if he can't see your head over the loop, then you're safe. The hitboxes can be weird though, so don't use this as a reference 100% of the time. Sometimes you may be better off just trying to dodge to the left or right, but since he can M2 fake for distance or drag his whip for an easier hit, I would recommend crouching instead. Alternatively, you could just leave the loop if you have another one close by and you think he's going to bring out his whip. If he catches on to this though, he may fake the pullout so he can catch up quicker. Cenobite. Countering Pinhead is a bit harder since he's no longer available to buy. This makes running into him incredibly rare. I'm sure some of you out there don't even know that this killer was in the game. When playing against this killer, do your best to play unpredictably in chase, specifically when he goes into his power. If you're running to a window or pallet and he pulls out the gateway, try to dodge left or right since he may assume you're going to go for the resource and miss because of it. The biggest counter though is managing the box successfully. If you're solo queue, always assume none of your teammates are going to go for the box and just do it yourself. If you're on comms with people, you can coordinate easier, but there's no reason to risk it when alone. If none of your random teammates go for the box, it gives the killer map-wide pressure and an easier down on whoever's in chase. Artist. Countering Artist can be really challenging if the player knows what they're doing. Artist has decent map-wide pressure with the ability to send crows at gens from anywhere on the map. The best way to deal with this is by knowing where the nearest locker is and fast vaulting in and out of it when she hits you with her crows from a distance. This immediately gets rid of the crows and protects you from the chance of getting hit again while dispelling normally. In chase, she's a bit more oppressive. Most artists will set up the crows in loop to injure you when you go back to the resource. Your best bet here is either leaving the loop and going to another one nearby, or stop running right before you run into the pathway of the crow and hope she triggers it early. Strong artist players won't fall for this though and will wait until you're directly on it to trigger it, so don't rely on this too heavily. Also keep in mind, you can't vault or drop pallets when dispelling, so make sure you have enough distance if you try and dispel mid-chase. Onryo. This killer is incredibly annoying to face, especially depending on how she plays. Her chase isn't anything special. You can loop her like you would any M1 killer with the addition of her passive phasing. I personally think passive phasing is stupid and encourages RNG skill, but assuming behavior isn't watching this video, we can't do anything about that. Her only other chase mechanic to be aware of is the fact that she can't get stunned while demanifested, and she loses collision with all survivors. This makes it nearly impossible to body block for your team, so I wouldn't recommend trying it. For her condemned mechanic, just keep up on tapes as the match progresses. A good rule to follow is doing a tape when you hit 3 or 4 stacks. Also make sure to turn off the TVs near important resources like gens or freshly unhooked teammates. Keep a mental note of where her TVs are in the map, and you'll be able to predict where she's teleporting if you have good game sense. Dredge. Countering Dredge is fairly easy. Keep lockers locked and run to a new tile when he uses his remnant in chase. There's also a mechanic I wasn't aware of until recently, but you can actually destroy his remnant if you run into it before he TPs. This lets you massively extend a loop, or buy a ton of time if you pull it off. Of course, it can just teleport back to the remnant before you get there, but knowing this is possible gives you a ton more opportunities, especially if you have a teammate nearby to destroy it. His nightfall isn't really a huge issue either. Just keep a good general awareness at all times and it shouldn't be able to get the jump on you. Bonus tip: when locking a set of 2 lockers, you actually only need to lock 1. This is because it will automatically teleport the Dredge to the locked locker, and this way you can lock the other locker later for another use instead of locking both, it breaking out of one and then destroying the other one itself. Mastermind. Countering a good Wesker can be incredibly difficult. Knowing what tiles to his power is good at and what tiles his power is bad at can be incredibly helpful though. Filler pallets like the ones on Macmillan with lots of debris and boxes around can be really useful to dodge his power. He also heavily benefits from knowing exactly where survivors are, so if he doesn't know where you are, you can use this to your advantage and position yourself in a more unpredictable spot. On tiles he excels at though, the best thing you can do is dodge out of the way when you think he's going to hit you with his second dash. Most Weskers will use their first dash to get in range, then actually go for the hit with their second. Use this to your advantage, especially if you're on ping, and try to dodge out of the straight line at whatever loop you're at. His hitbox can be really precise if aimed in a straight line, so hugging the opposite end of a tight hallway could be the difference. Also keep in mind whether or not he has enough distance on you to hit you at a window. If this is the case, try and dodge to the left or right of the window, and you can force him into vaulting, giving yourself a ton of distance. Also important to mention, but also kind of a no-brainer, spray yourself whenever you get infected by his power. Don't worry about saving them, just find a spray when it's safe to do so, and don't give him any more value out of his infection. Knight thrives at keeping survivors away from gens and saving his own time. Most Knight players will use his summons to break pallets, keep you off gens, and zone survivors into a more favorable area for him. The best way to play against this is by keeping in mind which guards are active and which aren't, and knowing the difference between them. The Carnifex is best at breaking pallets and gens, but isn't very good at chase, so ideally you can just keep your distance on him. The Assassin is the fastest, but doesn't chase for very long. The best way to deal with him is by, again, keeping distance and running into windows without vaulting them. If you touch a window as survivor but don't vault, any guard chasing you will follow the exact path to the window. This lets you walk right by them if you touched a window prior. Just make sure not to get too close because the guards still will be able to hit you if you're in their range. The last guard is the Jailer, slower than the Assassin but will chase you for much longer. Use the window trick mentioned above to deal with him and try to keep as much distance as possible. Don't drop pallets against the guards since it's impossible to stun them and they can just phase right through them. If the Knight is chasing you while a guard is after you, your best bet is to get as much distance as possible and keep holding W. If you're injured, you're probably going to go down, but if you're healthy, make sure you don't get double hit. It's much better to just intentionally run into the guard and get hit for a better position than try and avoid them both and getting double hit and instant downed. Skull Merchant. Skull Merchant is unironically one of, if not the worst killer in the game right now. Just pay attention to your surroundings since you can gain undetectable from her drones, and either don't move or stay crouched when in line of sight with one of the drone beams. Alternatively, you can hack her drone to make it immobile for a short time, but this really isn't necessary since even while active, her drones aren't that much of a threat. Don't underestimate her, but by all means, play fully confident while against this killer. Singularity. Singularity is one of the most patience-based killers in the game. He's really good at setting up a web, never leaving it, and slowly getting hook states on survivors. The best way to counter this is slowly chipping away at gen progress, getting hit, resetting, and continuing. If you manage to not get hooked, then Singularity doesn't actually gain anything from the interaction, and loses a kick on a generator, since killers can only kick gens a limited amount of times. Play it patient, try not to give up hook states, and pressure EMPs when you can to try and make it harder for him to patrol his 3-gen. For the chase aspect, it's super important that you don't try to pallet stun him while he's overclocked. If you do, the pallet will break on him and he won't get stunned at all. The best counter in chase is to pre-drop pallets and break line of sight, since he can't teleport to you if he doesn't see you. It may also be worth it to carry an EMP on you once you're on death hook, since you can use it mid-chase to stop him from teleporting to you. Windows are also incredibly strong against his killer, since if you're close to the vault, he'll teleport to the other side of the window from you instead of directly on top of you. Careful not to greed this though, because sometimes it's just better to break line of sight and deny teleport. Xenomorph. Xenomorph is one of the most difficult killers in the game to counter because it takes a lot wider of game knowledge to do efficiently. When you're getting chased by a Xeno that's in crawler mode, there's not much you can do in chase. The tail attack has an insanely wide range, and the hitbox can also be dragged, making it even more of a threat. The cooldown of missing the tail attack also isn't enough for you to make distance. The best way to deal with this is setting up turrets beforehand. Turret placement is incredibly niche, and players with thousands of hours still don't understand the best way to use them. Every loop varies of course, but the simplest way to put it, never put a turret directly in the path of a loop. This will let the killer break it while still chasing you. You ideally want to put it slightly away from loops, but still in the line of sight of the path. This way the killer will get hit constantly by the turret if they chase normally, but if they stray away to break it, you get distance. Since the turrets are line of sight based, you have the ability to be really creative with placement. The issue is when two tiles are close enough together that it basically shuts down one of the loops, since if you get chased there, then the turret will be in the path of chase once again. The good guy. The best counter to Chucky is disconnecting. The Unknown. Unknown has some of the most fun counterplay in the game in my opinion. Once you're infected with its UVX, if you hold line of sight with it the entire time, it'll get its power back right when you have about 10% of the infection left. This means you need to dodge one shot, then you'll be in the clear. Distance is the best way to do this, while ideally maintaining line of sight to get rid of the last little bit. Careful when right next to them though, since it's incredibly easy for them to guarantee an M2 hit from close range. Some unknowns will infect you, then hide behind the tile you're looping at to try and stop you from getting rid of the infection. If the killer tries to do this, just leave when you're sure they can't see you. You'll stay infected, but you'll get an insane amount of distance on the killer, and if they still commit to you, you can hold line of sight while they catch up. Make sure you're still running during this, and looking behind you in case you need to dodge. Their other ability is the Husk Teleport. They have the ability to set up clones of themselves across the map, and teleport to them at will, with a cooldown. You can dispel these when close to them, but if you cancel the dispel, it will instantly infect you with the UVX. The killer can also teleport back to these while you're dispelling, and for about 1 second after the dispel finishes. Try and only dispel when you know the killer is in chase, hooking someone, or just all around busy doing something. This is also a no-brainer, but don't loop at tiles where they have clones set up. This is easy to do though, since you can see the clone's auras through walls when nearby. The Lich. Vecna can be easy to counter, since he's a jack of all and a master of none. Do your best to get both special items from chests as soon as you can, and hope and pray you get the interloper boots. I'll explain why in a moment. Here's all of Vecna's powers and how to counter them. Fly. To counter Fly, be aware of what resources are nearby and how much distance he has on you. He may try to body block a pallet or window, so if you think he's going to fly past you before you make it to the resource, double back and try and find a new resource to work with. Blight of the Damned. If you crouch, the skulls he summons will go right over you. If the killer gets lucky though, this isn't counterable. He does technically have the ability to spawn them directly on top of you, so you won't have the chance to crouch under them in time. He does have an animation when doing this though, so if you're paying enough attention, you can duck under them. That counterplay goes straight out the window though if he's on the other side of the wall or tile, since he can still summon them through walls and guess where you are. Try not to get caught vaulting or dropping a pallet when he has his skulls off cooldown, since when you're animation locked, he has a much easier time hitting you when you vault or drop. Wait a moment to try and bait out the skulls, crouch, then do what you were going to do. Dispelling Sphere, you don't counter this, unless you have the Archivist power, which lets you see the sphere's aura. If the sphere hits you, the killer gets Killer Instinct on you, and your powers are disabled until the timer on your icon goes all the way down. The Dark Lord. Remember how Vecna was a jack of all and master of none? The DBD devs saw this, didn't like it, and released Dracula, master of all. He's essentially Spirit, Pyramid Head, and Wesker, all put into one. His bat form is Spirit. He can't see survivors, but he can move incredibly fast around the map. He can also teleport to windows and down pallets while in this form. You'll be able to see him and hear this though, and pre-leave whenever you see this happening. He can still hear survivors in this form and see scratch marks, so stealth if you're trying not to get found. His dog form is Wesker, giving him 2 decently long lunge attacks in succession. Dodge this like you would dodge a Wesker dash, but also keep in mind that he has to use both dashes. He can't use one then cancel. If he starts one, it will automatically use the other one, unless he gets a hit with the first one. His final form, being human, gives him pillars of flame that he can use like Pyramid Head. Similar to Nemesis, if he can't see your head, he can't hit you with the flame. This only applies when standing though. Dodge this like you would dodge Pyramid Head's M2 attack. His strongest form is Wolf by far, so try to prioritize positioning yourself in a place that will be strongest against his wolf form, like jungle gyms or strong windows. Houndmaster. Houndmaster is a lot easier to counter than I first thought. There's just a few rules when in chase. First rule is being aware of the fact her dog can injure or down if you vault a window or pallet while it's hitting you. Always try to dodge when near a window or pallet when she starts the dog attack. This really only applies at downed pallets and windows though. The best way to play against her at an up pallet is playing chicken. If you drop the pallet early, she can send the dog over it and grab you for free. If you wait for the dog to grab you though, you can immediately stun it off you and you won't get injured. You're best off waiting to drop the pallet if you see her in a whistle animation. Always wait a moment to see if she's going to try and swing through the pallet or pull up the dog last second. She also can't put the dog whistle away quick enough to hit you without you reacting, so you're perfectly safe just sitting at the pallet waiting to drop it if something happens. Bonus tip, other survivors can free you instantly from the dog's grab by interacting with it. Very niche trash with few uses, but it can save you a match in the endgame. The Ghoul. To be completely honest, Ghoul has no real counter. He's up there with Nurse and Blight in terms of strength, where you have to have very specific resources at your disposal to stand a chance. The first rule is never willingly go into a dead zone against this killer. Distance means nothing. Stay where you're safe. The second rule is stay patient when dropping pallets. If you drop immediately, he may just vault over the pallet with his power and you won't have any distance. Wait to drop the pallet until he puts his power away, or you can guarantee a stun. The third and final rule is accept the fact there's absolutely nothing you can do to prevent the first hit. Regardless of how well you're positioned, if the killer knows the general area you're in, you're going to get injured. Don't waste time healing against this killer since he can injure so freely. Bonus tip, you have free will and can disconnect against this killer if you want to. The Animatronic. Springtrap is relatively easy to counter. Treat him similar to Huntress in the way that you need to be careful when around windows and pallets with a strong line of sight for the killer. Regarding his axe, he actually moves as fast as Huntress when he has his axe ready to be thrown, and then moves as fast as a normal killer when it's on cooldown. Dodge it like you would a Huntress hatchet, and try not to get orbitaled at literally every tile. For the door aspect of his power, it can be incredibly strong to reveal him to a teammate when they're in chase. This is even better in a Swift since you can ask for wall hacks at a specific door near chase. The killer can use the axe to temporarily disable the door camera, but that buys you distance, so it's a win-win. Also, never use the doors to travel as survivor unless you're sure the killer is busy in chase or doing something else. Taking the door is far too big a risk when you don't know what the killer is doing. Something good to know though is both you and the killer can take doors separately at the same time, and you won't get grabbed if the doors have no interlap. Example is if you go from door 2 to 8 and the killer takes door 3 to 5, neither one of you will see each other and there's no risk. Also, just keep in mind he gets stealth from his doors, so be constantly looking around and aware of where his doors are in proximity to you. Bonus tip, the door's control panel will start flashing when the killer is coming. No noise is made, but if you pay attention to this, then you can pre-leave consistently. That's it for this video, but if you want to get better at facing every single killer as survivor, check out this all-around survivor guide.